fucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this. Veteran boxing scribe Dake Jonovan tweeted, Deontay Wilder versus Robert Helenius is finally confirmed by PBC to headline October 15th Fox Sports pay-per-view. Co-feature pits former super middleweight champions Caleb Plant and Anthony Dirrell in WBC title eliminator. Show airs live from Barclays Center in Brooklyn.
WBC Eliminator. What do you figure, that the winner of the fight gets David Benavidez?
More than likely. David Benavidez is the WBC's interim champion. He is the mandatory challenger to the green belt, even though no mandate has come down. And it's questionable as to whether or not one will, because the WBC doesn't want to miss out on those Canelo Alvarez sanctioning fees. We know the last time they tried to put the squeeze on that guy some years ago, back when Gennady Golovkin was WBC's interim champion in the middleweight division. Canelo Alvarez told them to take their belt and stuff it.
Fuck it.
Fuck off. Canelo Alvarez marches to the beat of his own drum. After chucking that belt, the WBC spent a lot of time trying to get back in Canelo Alvarez's good graces, and they've been playing nice ever since. So what you have to ask yourself is,
Do you really think they'd strip Canelo Alvarez?
do you think they'd strip Canelo with a green belt to give it to David, who's going to bring them smaller sanctioning fees than Canelo would?
It's a legitimate question.
This Caleb Plant versus Anthony Dirrell fight being billed as a WBC eliminator. Whoever wins the fight comes that much closer to taking on David Benavidez, as they would have to go through him in order to get to Canelo Alvarez. Not saying they will or won't, but that is the pecking order.
That's the way it breaks down.
Former IBF champion Caleb Plant last saw action in November. Canelo Alvarez fight where we all saw him get slumped. We all saw him get knocked out, set to return in October, just a month short of 1 year's time.
Just 1 month short of a year since he fought.
You know, Anthony Dirrell's been wanting to get Caleb in the ring for a while, little over a year's time, and now it's here. Anthony Dirrell, who last saw action in November, the same as Caleb, on the undercard of Caleb Plant versus Canelo Alvarez.
Both Caleb and Anthony have been out of action for the same amount of time because they both fought on the same card.
This isn't great in terms of a chief support, a co-feature, a co-main event to the main event. You think about it, it really isn't. You got one guy, he's approaching the end of his career, pushing 40, and, you know, the other guy, he's a lot younger than that guy, but the last time we saw that guy, well, he got knocked out.
Jesus Christ.
Last time Anthony Dirrell saw action, he was in there with Marcos Hernandez, who he stopped in 4 rounds by way of a technical knockout. Anthony, he's about 8 years older than Caleb Plant. He's 38. Caleb, who's a very spry 30.
30 years old. Rebound fight for Caleb, get out of town fight for Anthony.
Anthony Dirrell's 38 years old. What do you want me to say?
Really not high on either of these guys, to be honest with you.
This is a fairly significant fight, and a fairly important fight for former IBF super middleweight champion Caleb Plant, because he's got to get himself back in the winner's bracket. It won't bode well for him if he can't. If he can't rebound, if he can't secure the W over a 38-year-old Anthony Dirrell who languished, who had to go through the gears with Avni Yildirim, the same Avni Yildirim that Chris Eubank Jr. knocked out easy, and Canelo Alvarez.
Canelo knocked that guy out easy, too.
Anthony Dirrell actually had to go through the gears with that guy. He actually struggled a bit with Avni Yildirim. I gotta tell you, this is not a mouth-watering fight. Caleb Plant hasn't established himself as so much of a force at super middleweight, so head and shoulders above everyone else, that the bookies might not price this fight at close to even money. He is coming off a knockout loss after all, and his defensive prowess, him being a defensive fighter, what's supposed to be a defensive specialist, if you ask me.
Hey, I remember when he fought Caleb Truax, and he was marked up.
Didn't look impressive against that guy over a year ago. Yet another guy who was pushing 40, the same way that Anthony Dirrell is pushing 40. I could see Caleb Plant being the slight favorite with the bookies.
The slight favorite, but not the overwhelming favorite.
I could see that. And I could see Caleb Plant on points being the logical way to go, the logical choice. But I reiterate, I ain't got a whole lot of faith in Caleb, and I'm not that impressed with his boxing. I'm not, but
conservatively, Caleb Plant on points would be the way to go. That would be the logical pick.
it's the co-main event to the main event. We now move on to the main event, the main course. Deontay Wilder's ring return against the Nordic Nightmare, Robert Helenius, a subject we've broached the last couple of days the last couple of weeks, as Robert was tabbed as Deontay Wilder's rebound opponent for some time. And I told you guys from the get-go, I told you guys from the very beginning, Robert Helenius didn't end up on Deontay Wilder versus Tyson Fury's undercard by accident. He didn't end up there for no reason.
I figured if Deontay Wilder don't retire, if he decides to come back, this is likely going to be who he fights.
So I'm not the least bit surprised to hear that it's official, and this is who he's fighting. Deontay Wilder, who is quoted as saying, "I've done great with my finances. I make more money outside the ring than inside. Most times fighters ran out of money and they need to come back. It's not the story with me. You're looking at a guy that has it all, and I smile as I say that."
He makes more money outside the ring than inside the ring. What's he doing outside the ring? He's getting millions of dollars.
Deontay Wilder is a 7, sometimes 8-figure fighter. He is.
He's getting 7 or 8 figures outside the ring. Doing what?
There was some kind of a blurb a couple of months ago about Deontay Wilder cutting a record with his brother. I don't know, maybe he's getting money from that, or that fragrance that he put out there with his lady friend, Telly Swift.
Call me crazy. I don't think any of those endeavors turned out to be 7 or 8 figure endeavors.
Could be real estate. You know, Danny Garcia, Julian Williams. It's my understanding that they've been dabbling in real estate and doing fairly well in doing so. Maybe Deontay Wilder's doing that down there in Alabama. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Maybe he's flipping houses. I mean,
What's a house go for in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, anyway?
live in a state where the cost of living is low. House don't cost but a couple $100,000. This fighter, he makes about 7 or 8 figures per fight. Plenty of money to start flipping houses down there. Who really knows? I don't get the sense that Deontay Wilder's coming back because the well's dried up and he's strapped for cash. I really don't think that.
No, I don't think that's why he's coming back. He could be exaggerating a bit.
Just a bit. He may have outside endeavors, and those outside endeavors, they may very well be lucrative. Now, not so lucrative that he's making more money outside the ring than he's making inside the ring. I don't know that I believe that, but I can believe that he's got a couple of projects he's working on that are bringing him in some residual income. I can believe that. And I don't believe he's coming back because he's broke, because he's strapped for cash as the well is running dry. No, I think he's all right.
Yeah, I mean, at least right now, I think he's okay.
Financially, I think he's all right. And he's set to take on Robert Helenius. I've broached that subject before and what could happen. Robert Helenius, a fighter who can punch a bit, can box a bit, though he...
It's a good little fight on paper, but like I said, the selling point here isn't that he's facing Robert Helenius. The selling point is that he's back.
and that he's not retiring. The intrigue of seeing whether or not he has anything left. Can he really get back to his winning ways? Because if he can, he likely ends up facing the winner of Luis Ortiz versus Andy Ruiz, provided that the winner's Andy Ruiz, because nobody wants to see a Luis Ortiz trilogy.
Very recently chimed in on that fight.
He said, "I do see Luis Ortiz winning this fight in devastating fashion. A lot of people look at his age, but age only defines a person so far. If he continues to do great things, we might see Ortiz versus Wilder 3. Let's go, Luis!"
Why the hell would we see Luis Ortiz versus Wilder 3? He knocked him out both times.
I've talked about the possibility of Luis Ortiz potentially beating Andy Ruiz and how that might affect Deontay's matchmaking moving forward. I think if it happens that way, what Shelly Finkel, Deontay's longtime manager, might move to do is put Wilder in a Daniel Dubois fight, as Shelly Finkel himself expressed an interest to his old buddy Frank Warren about doing that fight. He's interested in Dubois versus Wilder. Daniel Dubois, who may end up facing Dillian Whyte in the very near future. Let's see if they don't get that over the line. Better still, if Luis Ortiz were to beat Andy Ruiz, that would affect the matchmaking moving forward for Deontay Wilder, because I don't think they'd actually move to do a trilogy. They would have to find Deontay someone else to fight. Perhaps Ali
Who
Demirezin.
very recently gave Adam Kovnowski his 3rd professional loss. I think that's a possibility.
Daniel Dubois is a possibility. Ali Demirezin is a possibility. Should Luis Ortiz upset the apple cart for Andy Ruiz? Now, if it happens the other way, the safe bet is that the people at the PBC will move to do a battle of the former champions. Deontay Wilder versus Andy Ruiz if Andy makes it past Luis.
Luis Ortiz didn't look nothing spectacular against Charles Martin. He got sat on his back pocket 2 times in that fight.
So at the same time, Andy Ruiz didn't look nothing spectacular the last time we saw him, and that was some time ago. The Chris Arreola fight.
Can you believe it's already been a year since that fight?
Time flies when you're getting fat. That fight took place in May of last year. May of this year, and he still hasn't returned to action. He's set to return to action against Luis Ortiz in a few weeks. And, you know, when we did see Andy, he didn't look nothing special. He has since parted ways with Eddie Reynoso. He has a new trainer that he's breaking in, so he still is in an experimental phase with a new cornerman, and we'll see how that works out.
Deontay had a lot to say. He even talked about the Tyson Fury trilogy.
And he said it was a good fight while it lasted. It was a great time. Fighters, we risk our lives for others' entertainment, and that night, we just got a lot of entertainment for everybody.
How long you think it'll be before he brings up Glovegate?
How long do you think it'll be before the propaganda peddlers here in the YouTube boxing community start pumping out videos daily about the Glovegate conspiracy in order for personal gain, personal profit?
It was never proven by any investigation that Tyson Fury cheated in any of those fights, but that didn't stop these guys from making videos non-stop about it.
You guys know I'm no Tyson Fury fan, but I gotta call a spade a spade. I gotta call bullshit. And that entire Glovegate conspiracy, that was just a lot of bullshit.
From a lot of sore fucking losers who idolized a sore fucking loser.
Now that he's had some time away and some time to sit down, maybe he's not so sore anymore.
Maybe not. We'll see.
Speaking about what's motivating his return, he said, once I got my statue in my hometown, and I saw so many people arrive and celebrate with me and my family, to see all the emotions, grown men crying in front of their children and saying, he is real, a real true king, made me feel like my job is not done. I will say this much. I feel like Deontay Wilder is out of the world title picture, at least for the time being. Because the world titles may end up being contested between Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury. But that doesn't mean that there still isn't money out there for Deontay Wilder. I told you, this ring return could result in either 325,000 pay-per-view buys or better, as high as 400,000 as far as I'm concerned, because the appeal, the selling point, isn't the fight itself. It's not who Deontay Wilder is fighting so much as that he's fighting, that he's not retired.
He can parlay that fight into one or two more fights.
I think he can do that. The rumors and rumblings checked out. This is going to be a Fox pay-per-view, not a Showtime pay-per-view. Fox reaches that many more homes than Showtime, a premium cable network which in some states is behind a paywall, whereas Fox is free depending on where you live.
You don't need a subscription depending on where you live to have Fox.
Bigger core audience to market the fight to, bigger megaphone than Showtime's megaphone. So the fight could do commercially well depending on what the operational costs are.
I don't necessarily think that Deontay Wilder's return is geared towards a world title run, depending on who's got those world titles.
I already told you what to expect if Anthony Joshua wins. If Anthony Joshua wins, you can expect Deontay Wilder and Shelley Finkel to name drop that guy incessantly, the way they used to in 2018. But if Alexander Usyk wins, well, they won't seem as interested.
We'll see.
And just in keeping with the theme of rebounding, guys that are on the rebound, Caleb Plant, Deontay Wilder, Dillian Whyte, who declared that he intends to return in a big fight in November. There's Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. I'd love to fight Deontay Wilder, even have another go at Tyson Fury, Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker, Daniel Dubois, but my main focus is to get back at Anthony Joshua. Well, if Anthony Joshua wins this weekend,
The focus will then turn to a potential Tyson Fury fight. I think that goes without saying.
if he loses, then they can perhaps meet up with each other for the second time. Both fighters having lost some luster since their initial meeting, having gone out there and seen what's out there, tasted victory, tasted defeat.
If Anthony Joshua wins, Dillian Whyte is not in the running. But if he loses,
Then maybe a rematch can happen. The guys that Dillian Whyte mentioned, Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker, they're supposed to be fighting each other very soon. Thus, neither one of them will be available in November for a Dillian Whyte fight. Daniel Dubois, on the other hand, he ain't got nothing going on, and there have been rumors and rumblings of negotiations between the two teams, between Dillian Whyte and Daniel Dubois. I half expected Dillian to pop up on the Sky Sports and Boxer side of things, and because no official announcements have been made, there is still room for that to happen.
Dillian Whyte has been working with Matchroom for a long time, but it's been on a fight-by-fight basis.
Most people tend to think of Dillian Whyte as being a matchroom fighter. one of Eddie Hearn's boys, but he's not actually an, according to Hoyle, matchroom fighter. He has a level of autonomy that makes a Daniel Dubois fight possible if he's willing to entertain it. Beyond that fight, should he emerge the victor, he could always pop up somewhere else, provided he doesn't enter into any
multi-fight agreements or exclusivity deals. He has the autonomy to go from Queensbury over to Boxer, and maybe from Boxer over to Matchroom, back over to Matchroom.
I think that Dillian Whyte, much like Tyson Fury, is lying in wait, watching closely as to what happens this weekend, this weekend's mega rematch between Anthony Joshua and Alexander Usyk. I think he knows if Anthony Joshua wins, there's not much chance of a rematch happening anytime in the near future, but if he loses, it's something that he could explore with Eddie Hearn, who he's worked with for a long time.
It also depends on how Anthony Joshua loses. If he goes in there and he gets knocked out real bad.
We may not see that guy for the rest of the year, or at minimum till the end of the year, which may not be soon enough for Dillian Whyte, at which point he may go into negotiations with Daniel Dubois, advanced negotiations if they're not there already.
I think he's waiting out the outcome of that fight before he makes a decision.
On the premise that he does end up fighting Daniel Dubois, that's an intriguing fight. It's an intriguing fight because Dillian Whyte is a lot more experienced at world level than Daniel Dubois is.
Though Daniel is considerably younger, less wear and tear than Dillian Whyte, less professional losses.
Daniel's younger, so he's got more upside than Dillian, though that also means he's greener than Dillian, a lot greener. You know, Dillian Whyte has shared the ring with Anthony Joshua, with Robert Helenius, with Derek Chisora 2 times,
with Alexander Povetkin 2 times, the Olympian.
Another Olympian in Oscar Rivas.
More recently, Tyson Fury. He's won some fights, he's lost some fights, but overall, he is a lot more experienced than Daniel Dubois.
Daniel, who was very recently in action against America's own Trevor Bryan, then unbeaten Trevor Bryan, secondary WBA champion Trevor Bryan, who Daniel Dubois did make short work of, though for some reason, he didn't look world level. He didn't look world class. Looked a bit weird in there. He'd have to look a lot better than that opposite the ring, Dillian Whyte. 50-50 fight on paper.
I mean, yeah, he's got losses, but look at who he lost to.
Daniel Dubois on the level of those guys, those fighters?
Only one way to find out.